Newsfirst, NEWSLINE.
A very good evening and welcome to another edition of NEWSLINE. Today's NEWSLINE, of course, is a recorded version. Before we move on any further, let's get to know our guest this evening. He is none other than Pasan Vijayawardena. He is an economic research analyst at the Advocata Institute. A very good evening, Pasan, and welcome to the show.
Very good evening. Very good evening.
Pasan, of course, economics has been the subject of many discussions here on NEWSLINE, as well as on many of our other programs here at MTV, MBC networks. But discussing about the economy hasn't been more important here in Sri Lanka, especially at this juncture when we are facing an economic crisis. The issues in the Sri Lankan economy are hitting hard and hitting home to everyone living here in Sri Lanka. Let's start off with a bit about the International Monetary Fund. Now, we've been promised an International Monetary Fund agreement since about the month of August. I remember there were statements made that we will be able to access money by August. Then it was pushed back to September, October, November. December was spoken of by a lot of people as the month in which we will be finally getting the IMF Executive Board approval. But now, of course, it seems as if that milestone has passed as well. We are not going to get the money by December or an executive board agreement by December. Recently, Dr. Nandalal made a statement saying that they are looking to get an assurance from China regarding debt restructuring. And if they do get it by December, we will be looking at getting IMF board approval by the month of January. But what's your take on these developments?
Yeah. So thanks for the invitation, Benedict. As the very first thing, I want to thanks for TV1. So coming to your particular question, Benedict, it's really interesting and people are waiting to see when are we going to receive this cash fund, 2.9 billion. The first thing that I want to highlight is definitely we will be not receiving the entire bulk of the 2.9 billions of the US dollars at once. As we everyone know, the disbursement will happen according to the separate parts. So as the initial receipt, we will be most probably receiving around 700 millions of the US dollars. So there will be a certain kind of a percentage. So I believe that it will be around 700 millions of US dollars as the very first part of the disbursement. But however, right. So one of the things mentioned by the lawyers and the economists in IMF is the delay is a kind of a unique characteristic of this IMF program. Because the debt restructuring is something painful for both the creditors and debtors. So since it is painful, it takes more time. So it's a common feature in every IMF program, taking time. Okay, so that was the thing what happened for us as well. As you mentioned, we started the story since last year. Okay, so but still we are waiting for the funds from the IMF. However, okay, will we receive this on January? Yes, we can keep some positive hopes on this January receipt and the statement presented by Dr. Nandalal. So, but the problem is, okay, even though China agreed for all these assurances and all these things, we have another problem. That is, in one side, we need to go for the foreign debt restructuring. So if China agreed, we will be covering 80% of the gain. That is very good, right? Because a 6.9% of the entire GDP is covered by the Chinese loan. So if China agreed for something, then that will be better. And I saw that the World Bank is also intervening to the process in order to take this China's acceptance on this debt restructuring. That support is also highly appreciated. And with all these positive responses, we can keep a positive attitude or positive expectation on the foreign debt restructuring. But the second problem is the local debt restructuring. Of course, when we are going for the foreign debt restructuring, the foreign countries will be asking, why can't you restructure your country loans? Why are you restructuring our loans only? You can restructure the domestic debt as well. Right. So domestic debt restructuring will be a worse scenario for Sri Lanka, because if Sri Lankan government say no for the Sri Lankan banks, the loans taken from the Sri Lankan banks, then Sri Lankan banks also will go for certain kind of a bankruptcy. If Sri Lankan's bank go for certain kind of a bankruptcy, definitely that will be impacting on the public as well. So that will be worsen the burden, that will be worsen the wound of this general public. No, if it go for a certain kind of a financial crisis, that will be a heavy problem in Sri Lanka. So because of this thing, right, however, the domestic debt restructuring is important to do and it should be done, right? Why I'm saying like that, there is a very interesting research, Benedict, done by Verite Research Group. Okay, they have done a nice research. They said that suppose we are not going for any debt restructuring, we are not going for foreign debt restructuring, we are not going for domestic debt restructuring. If our current income level remain as it is, that means if current yields are remaining as it is, then in 2032, government debt GDP ratio will increase up to 154%. That means from the GDP, 154% will be the government debt in 2032 if you are not going for any debt restructuring, either domestic or foreign. If you are going for foreign debt restructuring only, as you mentioned, right? If China agreed, we can complete the debt restructuring process up to good extent, then we will be completing the foreign debt restructuring. If you're not going for domestic debt restructuring, if you're satisfied only by the foreign debt restructuring, definitely our debt to GDP ratio will increase up to 136% in 2032. I'm not talking about the current figures. I'm talking about the figures that we will be seeing after 1 decade. That means the problem will remain even in next decade as well, right? If you're not going for the domestic debt restructuring. And the third, they said that even though we are going for domestic debt restructuring and the foreign debt restructuring both, right, our debt to GDP ratio will remain at 101% in 2032 after 1 decade. That means, Benedict, even though we are going for both debt restructuring, our debt to GDP ratio will exceed 100% even after 1 decade. Now you can see the size of this debt burden right now. Okay, so this is a very big problematic situation for country Sri Lanka. So what should we do, right? Debt restructuring is not enough, right? If current yields remain constant as it is, if current government revenue remain as it is, definitely our debt to GDP ratio will remain at 100 plus level even after 1 decade. So if you want to solve these problems, right, debt restructuring is a must. Together with that, we should think about the revenue sources and increasing the government revenue as well.
Alongside increasing the government revenue, there seems to be very little or no discussion at all about decreasing of government expenditure. Anything to add on that?
Yes, actually, even in the 2023 budget, Benedict, there was around 34% increment in the government expenditure, right? This is the period where we have to reduce the government expenditure now, right? But we have seen that there is a 34% increment in the government expenditure. But the thing is, it's okay. Increasing government expenditure, we can satisfy if the allocation of the government revenue among the expenses is happening in a better way. I'll present some information for you, right? Yes, in 2023 budget, they have allocated 152 billions of the rupees for social protection. That means, as I mentioned continuously in many cases, many instances, okay, the World Bank is estimating that our poverty rate will exceed 25% at the end of the 2022, right? This is a very big problem. There are vulnerable groups and poor population in Sri Lanka who are staying below the $0.9 daily income level. Right, this is a problematic situation. At this instance, we should spend more on the social protection, but they have allocated 152 rupee billions on the social protection. Next, 232 rupee billions on education. you know that with the COVID pandemic situation, with all these economic crisis situations, pupils and students lost their education opportunities. No, we have done a nice research on learning losses of South Asian region. Through that particular research, we understood that the Sri Lankan student will stay 4.4 years of time lag than the foreign students because of this pandemic crisis and economic crisis. So this is a period in which we should give more attention on the education than previous periods. Okay, but still in this budget, only 232 billions of rupees were allocated on the education. But for the then the other case, okay, health, Sri Lanka is taking victories in terms of malnutrition now. If I'm not mistaken, in the world, our rank is around 6th in terms of the malnutrition. So Ethiopia is well growing in terms of the malnutrition. They are not showing further increments in the malnutrition. They are moving down in the trend line. But what's happening in Sri Lanka, it's moving upward, right? However, for the health sector, we have allocated 322 billions. Right now, you can see all the numbers are around 100, 300 in terms of the numbers for these expenses. However, when considering about the defense expenses, this time we have allocated 539 billions. That means 539 billions only for the defense expenses and the defense related expenses. Right, this is a 10% increment than the previous year. Right, there was a nice research. I can't remember who did the research, but this particular research has recognized that the total defense expenses what we have incurred during the period of 30-year civil war is lesser than the total defense expenses what we have incurred within the period of 2009 and 2017. So my question is, why are we spending this much of amount on the defense during this kind of a peaceful period? So if we can reduce those things up to a certain extent, we can take those expenses to the right places and spend more on the social protection, more on the education, more on the health. That is the thing what we should do. So of course, we should reduce the expenses. That's okay. But even though we are spending a single rupee, that should be allocated in a productive, efficient, rational manner.
Thank you very much. We will discuss a little bit more about how Sri Lanka, in moving forward, one idea that has been floated is the privatization of several SOEs. Now, this idea has been met by varying views from the general public. There are, of course, the trade unions who are strongly against this, and there is a section of the general public who believe that these SOEs being held by the government would only increase room for corruption and therefore should be privatized to a certain degree. We will continue our discussion on that after a short commercial break. Don't go anywhere. You're watching Newsline.
Newsfirst, Newsline.
Sripada pilgrimage season begins. PUCSL opposes minister's proposal for another electricity tariff hike. Attempts afoot to sell off hydropower plants. Reservoirs at risk. Partly warns. 5.9 billion rupees squandered through the termination of the light rail transit project. Audit report reveals. Stern statement from chief incumbent of the Mihintala Rajamaha Viharaya to the political authority. SJB decides against nominating candidates to the Constitutional Council, alleging it is a nefarious scheme to postpone elections.
Newsfirst, Newsline.
Newsline, we're in discussion with Pasan Wijewardhana. He is a research analyst at the Advocata Institute. Pasan, we were discussing about the state of economy in Sri Lanka. We spoke about the debt restructuring, the IMF staff level agreement, the executive board approval for the staff level agreement. And we promised our viewers that we will speak a bit about the privatization of state-owned enterprises. Now, the president himself has said that these state-owned enterprises need to be privatized. Now, we've been going back and forth on the privatization of state-owned enterprises. I believe that the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, the current majority party in parliament, was strongly against the privatization of these SOEs. I believe some previous supporters of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna who are now in the opposition or independent members in parliament like Vimal Veeravansa, Udaya Gammanpilla, Vasudeva Nanayakkara, was strongly against the privatization of the state-owned enterprises. But now the governing party in parliament seems to have done a 180-degree turn and now are in favor of privatization of state-owned enterprises, as was articulated by the president. What do you think should happen here? What's your take on this?
Yeah. So very talkative topic is the SOE restructuring. So then using the word privatization, I would like to use the word restructuring, because privatization, sometimes when we are saying privatization, people feel it like selling the entire property to the outside or the private sector and nothing for government after the privatization. But this thing is a little bit different. What we are going to do is we are going to sell in the majority of the shares to the private sector. If private sector can take the ownership of more than 50% of the shares in those government companies or government institutions, definitely what will happen? The private person will come to the chairmanship position. No? Then, if the private sector is playing the leading role in the company, definitely they will be exposed into the competitiveness in the market economy. If a certain kind of a company is entering or exposing to the competitiveness in the market economy, automatically, not automatically, with the efforts, what will happen? The profit level will go up, right? This is the common truth that we everybody know, right? But why the privatization is so important? Now the people are going against the privatization, or people are going against this restructuring. No. So most of the people are saying we are not interested in selling government assets, right? This is the thing that we can see, selling government assets. But rather than selling government assets, what is the hidden story in this case? We are going to sell the government liability as well, government loans. Most of the SOEs are running with big amount of loans, big amount of debt. Okay, so if we are selling certain kind of a government organization to someone else, definitely we are selling government properties. Together with that, we are selling government debt as well. Suppose, okay, Benedict, you have, suppose a small example, okay, you have purchased kind of a motorbike for 100,000 rupees. Okay, as a you have taken 100,000 rupees as a loan and you have purchased a kind of a motorbike. Okay, you have used it for 3 years. Now the motorbike is a kind of a wasted one, right? The market value of the motorbike is say 20,000 rupees. But you have taken 100,000 loan to buy it. However, the loan value has increased with the interest payments and all these things. Now your loan value is 150,000, including the interests as well, right? Now what will happen? The property, your asset is 20,000 rupee in terms of the value, but your liability, your loan, your repayment liability is 150,000. If you are going to sell this motorbike at this moment to someone, okay, that person have to purchase asset plus that liability. No, so this is something similar to that one. Government is not just selling the government assets, government is selling the loans as well. Let me just show examples. I have some statistics here. We'll take the Ceylon Electricity Board. Okay, in 2021, the loss that they have experienced is 22 rupee billions, but the loan amount is 94 rupee billions. Loss 22, but the loan amount is 94. So we are selling this loan actually. Next, right? The Petroleum Corporation lost in 2021, 82 rupee billions. But however, okay, these are the advocate institutions statistics. Okay, the loan that they have taken was around 505 rupee billions. Loss 82, the loan amount is 505 rupee billions. Next, Sri Lankan Airlines loss, right? in 2021, it was a double-digit number. However, the loan was 92 rupee billions. So these are the statistics. So all these statistics prove that there is a very big loan burden in these organizations. Now, who are paying for these loans? Who are paying for these losses? Sri Lankan public. So the privatization is a must at this moment. I'm not saying must, but should do at the moment. Not for all. Not for all. And I want to add, if I'm taking time, if I can take time,
yes,
yes, okay. So Benedict, this is very important aspect. Now the people are saying Sri Lankan government has chosen some of the profit earning companies for this privatization or restructuring activity. Yes, of course, that's true, right? But when we are going for a restructuring activity, the primary thing that we should consider is not the profit or loss, right? The thing that we should consider is the difference between return on assets of the company and return on assets of the industry. I'll tell one example. Suppose you are doing a certain kind of a bakery shop, right? Okay, you are doing a bakery shop, say ABC bakery shop. Your profit is minus 10,000 rupees. That means you are suffering with a kind of a loss, right? Other bakery companies are also there, right? Those companies are earning plus 20, plus 90, plus 100 of the profits. Then it is very clear you are a loss-making company and the other companies are sufficiently earning profits. So we should restructure your company. That's okay. But say, right, you are earning a loss, say minus 10 of loss, right? And the other bakery shops are also earning losses, say minus 20, minus 30, minus 40, right? Under that kind of situation, still your company is a loss-making company, but should we restructure? No. Because entire industry is a loss-making industry. That's a problem in the industry. Right? We have to cope up with the market behaviors of the industry. That's a problem in the industry. Restructuring your company is not a solution at that moment, even though you are a loss-making company. So by looking at the loss or profit, we can't decide it with 100% accuracy. What should we consider? The return on assets. What do you mean by return on assets? That means the return or the benefit what we can take, okay, by investing certain kind of asset, right? Okay, let me to explain some of the examples. Okay, so Sri Lanka Insurance Company, some of the findings from the Lineasia Company and Advocata, right? Sri Lankan Insurance Company is belonging to the insurance industry, no? In insurance industry, especially in the life insurance industry, the return on assets was recorded as 7.79. Let's say 8. That means return on assets in the life insurance industry is 8. What is the meaning of it? If we invest 1 rupee asset for a company, for a business, we will be taking 8 rupees as a return. So that's good, no? Investing 1 rupee asset and taking 8 rupee return, that's very perfect. But when that is a normal scenario in the insurance industry, life insurance industry. When come to the Sri Lanka Insurance Corporation, the value was recorded as 3.3. That means if we invest 1 rupee asset, the return what we can take is 3.3. So there is a very big gap between the industry average and the company average of this Sri Lanka Insurance Corporation. That means even though Sri Lanka Insurance Corporation is taking or earning profits, the performance of that particular company is lesser than the industry average as well. So restructuring is a must to do. And let me to explain another one. The Milco Limited, which is not discussed yet. The Milco Limited. You know the Milco Limited companies belong into the dairy industry, no? Right. So in the industry, average return on asset was recorded as 11.68. 11.68 means roughly 12. That means if you invest 1 rupee asset on a company, you will be taking 12 rupee as a return. Very big one, right? But do you know the Milco Limited's return on assets, right? It's 0.9. It's not at least one. That means by investing 1 rupee asset, we will be taking less than 1 rupee return. But industry is taking 12 rupee return. So very big gap, no? So that's why this privatization or restructuring is essential to do at this moment. Why? Right? So that's why. So however, what is the final conclusion that I want to highlight at that moment? By looking at the surface figures, by looking at the profit or loss, we can't come to the final judgments. We should go for the deep analysis, and we should see the history of these companies and decide what companies should be restructured and what companies should not restructure.
But Pasan, what do you think the reason is for these state-owned enterprises to earn such low profits or low return on assets as compared to average industry levels?
Yeah, so no need to mention by my own. However, there were some advocate of research works. Those research works found some reasons why these are suffering with this kind of inefficiency. Number one, structural inefficiencies. Structural inefficiencies mean basically you have seen in past, most of the times the chairmanship was taken by one of the family member from a political family. No, so there is a certain kind of a nepotism there at the upper level or at the top management level of these companies. That's why I ask, if we can give more than 50% of the ownership of these companies, definitely chairmanship will go for a private person. So then they will be controlling the businesses in a good way, and a part will be owned by the government. Since part is owned by the government, government will be receiving dividend income also. When those companies are earning profit, government can take dividend income also. So then what will happen? Non-tax revenue will go up. No need to charge taxes as well. Okay, so one is a structural inefficiencies and these political interference when choosing the top management level leaders. All right, and the second reason is the monopolistic power. You know that in most of the cases, the competitiveness is very low in the government organizations and SOEs, and they are trying to spread as kind of a monopoly power, right? That's something happened in the railway system as well. But in India, the private private-public partnership is available in the railway systems of India as well, PPP system, right? So however, the competitiveness is very low. Since there is no competitiveness, they are not trying to earn profit, so work with good level of efficiency. The other one is lack of incentives. No incentives to do the innovations, and there is a very big corruption level. Let me to explain one thing. When we are hearing the corruption, when we were hearing the corruption during our childhood, what is the first country which is coming to our mind? Ethiopia, right? Okay. However, in 2018, Ethiopia's rank in terms of the corruption that was identified in the Corruption Perception Index was 114. That means a very corrupted country. Okay, if you are ranking 1, the least corrupted country will be that one, and if you are ranking the last position, then that will be the highest corrupted country, and Ethiopia was at 114 level. At that time, Sri Lanka's rank was 89. So compared to Ethiopia, Sri Lanka is a less corrupted country. However, with the time, that was a figure identified in 2018, time went rapidly, and now we came to the 2021, and in 2021, Ethiopia's rank was 87 and Sri Lanka's rank was 104. That means the corruption has already increased in Sri Lanka and Ethiopia's corruption is moving down. So read the story of Ethiopia now. And definitely in next 5 years or next 10 years, Ethiopia will be one of the model country for the developments, right? Now, the World Bank has estimated that Ethiopia will reach to the middle income country level by the year 2025. Okay, when such things are happening for countries like Ethiopia, now Sri Lankan cabinet has given approval for downgrading Sri Lanka from middle income country to low income country. So see how Sri Lanka is moving to the backside or the reverse side. No, right? So in 1950, Sri Lanka was compared with UK. We were trying to become UK, and we were trying to become Japan like that. In 1977, we were trying to become 1977, 1990, we were trying to become Singapore. We wanted to become a Singapore. And now we are trying to become Ethiopia. This is the scenario.
I think your final statement quite really summed it up, Pasan. Thank you very much, Pasan Videwardana, research analyst at Advocator Institute, for joining us on Newsline this evening. Unfortunately, that's all the time we've got. We'll be happy to have you again sometime very soon, of course, as the developments in the economy continue. Thank you very much, Pasan, for joining us on our show. And also thank you very much to all our viewers out there for tuning in. Until we meet again, take care and God bless.